Television on rxmuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. This is your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. We have a lot going on rxmuscle.com right now. A very, very content-heavy week. So we're going to go right to Dave. Dave, it was on this show about a couple of years ago, back when we were in the Westbury studios, that you got a question. Who would be your dream interview? And you mentioned Dorian Yates. Well, today that dream came true.
Yeah, we got to interview Dorian, and we actually did over an hour with him, which will be broken into two parts. We basically addressed his competitive years first, his training methodologies, his blood and guts training methodologies, and his drug use, his anabolic steroid use. And then next week we're going to be interviewing him and getting his life after bodybuilding. Because there's so much that I had to talk to him about. I didn't really want to cut it short. And I know Dorian's done a lot of interviews, but I try to keep it along the lines of like what interested me as Dorian. Why was I so obsessed with Dorian Yates when I was coming up, and why was he a guy I looked up to and tried to emulate? And that's how I approached the interview. So I approached it from the point of view of a bodybuilder, someone who wanted to emulate him. And I think it'll come across differently than a lot of these other interviews that he's been doing out there by guys who really don't train or just maybe a social media type guys. So hopefully people like it. I thought it was terrific. I loved it. It really couldn't have gone any better. And like I said, I can't wait to do next week's. It was so long. I had to give him a break, and he had to go. So we're gonna finish it next week. And I think people will really enjoy it and be able to get a good idea and a good taste of what was going on. Because Dorian was one of the few people who really didn't talk much when he was competing, and now we're actually finding out what was going on behind the scenes with Dorian Yates when he was on stage.
Now, you could see I'm decked out in some old school Species gear with the knit, with the hoodie, but Dave is wearing a brand new limited edition Species shirt from houseofpain.com. Dave, you're wearing this shirt. We're running a very limited promotion right now at speciesnutrition.com for those who want that exact same shirt.
Yes, I'm not selling the shirt. I mean, it's a giveaway. It's free. If you want this shirt, it's very limited edition. It's a combined effort between House of Pain, the newly launched House of Pain clothing line, which I've always loved, and it's even better now that Joe Corbett owns it, and Species Nutrition. Basically, you spend $100 on speciesnutrition.com, you get the shirt for free, limited. We only have a limited amount. We have 46 shirts, okay, of various sizes, and once they're gone, that's it. I guarantee you by the end of today, they'll all be gone. I know it. I know it because it's a great shirt. Not only does it look great, not only does this little logo, this combined logo look great, but it's actually very soft fit and comfortable. Even Tyler, the creator, was saying how much he loved it. I got him a size large, and he's loving the shirt. So guys, if you want the shirt, I know you buy stuff on the site anyway. You might as well go to speciesnutrition.com, buy your $100 plus worth of stuff today that you need to stock up on, and get the shirt for free. But guys, I'm telling you, we did that sale what did we do? The Isolize sale that was super cheap. We sold out in less than 18 hours. So, and then everyone was crying to me the next day. So guys, you got to act quickly on these special promotions we do on this show because it doesn't last. A lot of people watch the show and they act on this thing immediately. You got to act quickly if you want one of these great shirts. And once again, I want to thank Joe Corbett at House of Pain. If you guys like a good quality hardcore bodybuilding clothing line, House of Pain is the place to go. They've always been hardcore, and they're even more hardcore now, and they got great quality clothing. I'm so happy about this.
How many shirts left?
There's 46 shirts to give away.
46. So get on it. Link is below in the show description. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you're watching us on rsmuscle.com, it is in the article. Let's go to the questions. First questions are from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, you want to give a little shout to the Dave Palumbo Experience app?
Yeah, I started this app about 2 years ago now, and it's basically a compilation of all my articles and videos I've ever written. There's workouts on there. All my protocols are being slowly but surely put up on there. I do a custom, private, exclusive Q&A video every week for the app members. So not only if you're an app member, not only do you get the free stuff that I do all the time, but you get exclusive Q&A stuff that I don't do for anyone else. And the great thing is these questions are all culled from the members of the app. So if you're an app member, you could ask as many questions as you want on there of me. I answer them, and then what I do is I take the best ones and I do a Q&A video. And the good thing is that everyone who asks questions on the app, okay, can see everyone else's questions on that app. So when I answer a question, everyone gets the answer to everyone else's question. So it's been super, super popular. People have been signing up, left and right, and it's because it's a great resource that's constantly updated on a daily basis of everything Dave Palumbo, all my information. And you know what? A lot of people request stuff. Hey, Dave, can you do a protocol for this? Can you write me a diet for that? Can I have a recipe for this? And what I do is everything gets put up on the app, so all the app members benefit from the community. So it's a little community that benefits from each other. You can sign up at the Android or iPhone or iTunes store for the Dave Palumbo Experience app. It's terrific. And let's read a couple questions, Sid, from some of the app members.
Let's take the first question from Zach. Dave, in the pre-contest cycle listed in the app, the initial weeks you have EQ and DECA both in. I don't normally see this. It's usually one or the other. Why do you suggest this combo?
A lot of people think that DECA and EQ are the same thing. They're absolutely not, first of all. Boldenone and nandrolone are not the same compound. Do they have similar properties in the sense that they're anabolics that build muscle and repair muscle? Yeah. EQ makes you, I think, a little hungrier, gives you a little better pump. DECA, great for the joints. So they're different. They're similar, but they're different, and that's why I like to combine them. The reason I combine them together in the first 8 weeks of my pre-contest cycles is because, obviously there's testosterone in there as well, is because I like EQ and testosterone for building muscle and just for being super anabolic. But when you first start contest prep, usually you cut your carbohydrate content down. Even in people who do eat carbs, you're eating less. So what happens is you hold less fluid, the joints tend to be less lubricated, and that little bit of DECA in there just helps get you past that first 8 weeks of being less full, if dare I say, less glycogen stores, and it allows the joints to continue to work and lift heavy weights. What I found is after 8 weeks, when we get down to that 8 weeks before the contest, at that point you kind of adapted already to the lower hydration level, and you don't really need the DECA. I usually pull that DECA out, and then we switch to our pre-contest drugs like Trenbolone and Masteron and Winstrol. So I find that they work very well together, and I think that it's basically like old bro science, reasons why people think that they shouldn't be combined.
Second question, why does Omega Lyse contain evening primrose oil? What does it do, and how is it different than an omega-3 fatty acid from JW Fitness?
Yeah, now remember, Omega Lyse is an essential fatty acid supplement. That means it contains your omega-3s and omega-6s. If you remember, there's two families of essential essential fatty acids. You can't just take one without the other. Matter of fact, if you just take one without the other, you throw the balance of the other off, and then you have a problem. It's the correct balance of the two that's very, very important. And we've stressed many times on many different programs about the need for omega-3s coming from animal sources of protein as opposed to plants. Flaxseed oil is not going to cut it because humans don't convert the parent compound alpha-linoleic acid into the active intermediates EPA and DHA. Fish oil, because it's an animal, already has the EPA, DHA in there. That's your omega-3 component. Your omega-6 component, there's two essential omega-6 fatty acids. One's arachidonic acid. We don't include that in this formula. Most people get a lot of it and enough of it in their foods. However, I sell a separate product from Bill Llewellyn called X Factor, which is pure arachidonic acid. That's another question we can deal with. But the omega-6 intermediate that it's very hard to get from the diet, okay, which almost no one gets, is, linoleic acid derivative known as GLA, or gamma-linoleic acid, and that's found in very high amounts in evening primrose oil, and that's why we put that in there. So we have our omega-3s, the EPA, DHA from the fish oil, and then we have the GLA coming from your evening primrose oil, and then to make Omega Lyse even better than everything else out there, I put an omega-7 fatty acid in there known as palmitoleic acid, which is an insulin sensitizing agent and is also a total body inflammation reducer, so it reduces C-reactive protein. So that's why Omega Lyse is such a complete essential fatty acid product. And if you take 3 pills twice a day, it's like an insurance policy against your health.
CFIT Dift, a few weeks ago on your Jason Ha interview, he mentioned that smoking marijuana will prevent you from being harder. Can you elaborate on this a bit?
Well, we all know that marijuana, raises estrogen levels. It makes you aromatize more. And, I had this roommate in college. Actually, it wasn't really him. It was a friend of his who was a complete pothead. This kid had been smoking pot since he's like 13 years old, day and night, day and night. He had the worst gynecomastia you've ever seen. Why? Because all his natural testosterone his body was producing was being converted to estrogen. And then the estrogen was exerting estrogenic effects on the body. So marijuana will soften you up. Here we are trying to get ready for a show, and you're trying to reduce estrogen as much as possible to harden up, and you're taking a drug that's making your estrogen levels go higher. So, will it be counteracted by Arimidex or Aromacin or Femara? Not all of it. I guess if you smoke enough pot, you can risk, being, jeopardizing that grainy hardness that you have. And if you're a real true bodybuilder, you're not going to mess around with that. There's nothing that jeopardizes how you look is worth taking.
Dave DeCoke, he prefaces his question by saying that, you've gotten this question over 1,000 times, but it is worth repeating because it is such an important, essential function for bodybuilders, and that is digestion. He wants to know, what do you do to get your digestion functioning at 100%?
Digestion functioning is a lot to do with sometimes eliminating foods that don't agree with your body. I identified early on that I don't digest lactose well, so I don't eat lactose, okay? Meaning that I try to eliminate all milk products, aside from whey isolates, which have almost virtually no lactose in it. I try to not eat a lot of cheese, minimal amounts. I try to keep dairy out of my diet because I'm just not good at digesting lactose. Other people have other allergies to different foods, to peanuts, to this, to that. You got to find out what sits right in your stomach and what doesn't sit right in your stomach. And if it doesn't agree with you, look, I could eat all the wheat in the world. I'm not wheat sensitive. That doesn't mean, so there's no reason for me to have a gluten-free diet. But there are other people that eat a little wheat gluten and they get bloated and gassy in their stomach. So they should eliminate that. So you got to find out what sits right with you and what doesn't. And the only way to really do it, you can try to go for all these wacky tests that they give at these, holistic doctors. The bottom line is try the food. If it bothers you and you see cosmetically it doesn't look good and you don't feel good, then you don't eat the food. Certain spicy foods don't agree with me, and they come up with me over and over and over again, so I don't eat them. I love McDonald's. Everyone knows I was a McDonald's freak back in the day. But if I ate the onions that came with the burgers, I would burp it up all day long. I don't know why. I just did so. I didn't eat the burgers. I didn't eat the onions. I did it without onions, and I never had a problem. I never got one day of indigestion as long as I didn't have the onions. But if I went to a McDonald's and they forgot to take the onions off and I was in a rush and I had to eat it, I tasted it the rest of the day. And that's just the way my body functions. So you have to know what foods sit right with you and what don't, and it's basically just trial and error.
Let's go to Excellent 187. Dave, could you talk about the impact and the difference between white and brown rice in regards to the impacts on both bulking and cutting? I see a lot of pros go for white rice, and yet so many health experts recommend brown.
Off season, I always ate brown rice because it's lower glycemic index, higher fiber type content. I think it's just healthier for you at controlling blood sugar because, off season, I don't want my blood sugar spiking. The only time I want my blood sugar spiking is post workout, in which case I would take, a high molecular weight carbohydrate in. Back in the 90s when there were none, I would use, like a Gatorade or usually an Ultra Fuel, something like that. So, nowadays, you use a carbolized and isolized post workout because you want something fast. When I'm carbing guys up pre-contest, I use white rice because it's quick. It's a quick carb. It releases a lot of insulin. It gets in fast. That's what I want to do. I want to push carbohydrates into the glycogen stores as quickly as possible. But when a person is not trying to do that and they're trying to just sustain energy all day long, you want a carb that trickles in, that doesn't have a high glycemic index, for most of the day. And that's brown rice. So the difference between brown and white rice from a performance standpoint is how much insulin are you going to release with it? How quickly is your blood sugar going to go up and down? And I think off season you want a nice steady rise in blood sugar and a nice steady release of insulin. You don't want to get huge spikes except post workout, like I said. Pre-contest, you want to manage. The truth is because you're eating such a precise amount of carbs pre-contest, you could eat white rice and probably get away with it because you're not eating that much of it. Your glycogen stores are always empty. You're not, working at topped off glycogen stores. So, like if I'm working with a guy and let's say he's on low carbs and, I just see he's really flat and I might say, you know what, tomorrow I want you to have 35 or 40 grams of carbs from white rice at all your meals with your whatever else I have eating. White rice is fine because I'm just loading glycogen storage. The next day he's off those carbs again. So once again, it depends on what you're looking to accomplish, and that's where you decide whether you use white or brown.
Again, the shirt that Dave is wearing right now, available right now at speciesnutrition.com. We're not selling it, but if you purchase $100 worth on speciesnutrition.com, we only have 46 left. I don't know how many we're going to have till the time I make this announcement, but again, only available at speciesnutrition.com with a purchase $100 or more at the website. Let's go to DH Fit. Now, Dave, shortly before the show, news broke that Bruno Sammartino had passed away at the age of 82, WWE legend. Obviously very close with Triple H. Triple H tweeting it out a short while ago. Did you have any stories or interactions with Bruno Sammartino?
My two meetings with Bruno Sammartino really that stick out in my mind. Number one, when I was a kid, my mom broke her ankle at my friend's Michael Popkin's house. You might be listening to this, and so I had to spend the night at his house because my mom was out of commission. And his dad took us to see wrestling at the Nassau Coliseum in Long Island. And Bruno Sammartino, it was the first time I'd ever seen wrestling in person. Bruno Sammartino was wrestling that night, and it was amazing to see him. Flash forward now, 30 years, 35, 40 years, and Bob Goldman was initiating Bruno Sammartino into the International Sports Hall of Fame that we had live streamed, and Bruno gave his speech, and afterwards I wanted to interview him, and for some reason there was too many people there, and I didn't get a chance to interview him because he was someone that I always looked up to as well, because he was a bodybuilder and a wrestler. And I said, man, I really want to meet Bruno Sammartino and talk to him, and I got into an elevator, and he was in there, and it was just the two of us riding this elevator up, and we got off the elevator together, and we were talking for 20 minutes after, and he was a super, super cool guy. And I know Triple H, just texted me actually and told me he died, I think probably before he even put the tweet up. And Triple H is actually in Saudi Arabia to do a show from this weekend through the next weekend, and he's going to actually have to fly back from Saudi Arabia and then go back there again, just because that's how important Bruno was to Triple H and to the whole WWE family. So, we definitely send our condolences out to his family. And I don't know what the official cause of death was yet, but he'll definitely be missed.
NP Hicks 1014 just read an interesting article about Viagra increasing skeletal muscle protein synthesis and reducing fatigue. Any thoughts or stories or experiences with Viagra and bodybuilding?
I don't buy it, sorry. I know there's a lot of studies out. There's a couple of weird studies that will say this or that. And I know there's guys that try to take them before the gym thinking they're going to get a better nitric oxide pump. I'm not buying it, guys. Look, I've used Cialis in the past and Viagra a couple times here and there. And you know what? I've gone to the gym the next day. And if anything, I felt a little fatigued because, it lowers your blood pressure a little bit. So I'm not buying it. I don't feel any nitric oxide pumps from it. Remember, Viagra and Cialis are so successful in its sales because they target nitric oxide release to the genitals. You get nitric oxide blood vessel volume down there in the genitals only. That's what the advantage of the drug is. It causes increased erection abilities. So it's really, I don't see any benefit to bodybuilding, to tell you the truth. People might argue with me. Sorry, I'm not going along with it. There's maybe one or two random rogue studies that suggest it, but nothing really has proven anything. And I think by now we would have been able to tell. There's plenty of bodybuilders who use it. I don't. If you're on anabolic steroids, taking a Viagra is not going to do anything. It's like, once again, it's like throwing sand on the beach.
Reminder right now on rxmuscle.com and the YouTube channel, our part 1 interview with Dorian Yates. Part 2, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, it's going up tomorrow, right?
Right. And then part 3 and 4 will be next week.
So again, Dorian Yates, part 1 right now at rxmuscle.com and the RX Muscle YouTube channel. Let's go to Miss Forrest. Dave, do you know if Anavar has any negative effects for someone with autoimmune issues?
No, anabolic steroids are usually pretty good for people with autoimmune disease. Initially we thought anabolics actually suppress the immune system, which would probably be good for autoimmune diseases. I actually think what anabolic steroids do is it attenuates the immune system, meaning that if your immune system is weak, it will enhance it, and if it's too overreactive, it will suppress it a little bit. So I think it actually regulates your immune system. So I really do think that anabolics are good for people who have autoimmune issues. Obviously, you have to assess it on a disease by disease state. Also it depends on what other drugs you're being given. If you're being given prednisone to suppress your immune system, you might want to ask the doctor if an anabolic would interfere with that. Because I don't want to give you medical advice here, but I think for a chronic use, for people who have chronic autoimmune issues that are always going on in their body, anabolics I think could definitely help and benefit that.
Good one here from Dave O'Dude. I just competed this last weekend, won both my divisions and bodybuilding classic. So congrats, Dave. Best remedy on stage to deal with cramps. I had the worst ones in my feet trying to hold a pose.
First of all, you got to assess what's causing the cramps. Are the cramps being caused by an electrolyte imbalance? My first reaction is usually a sodium depletion, especially if you're using a potassium-sparing diuretic like a Diazide. If you're getting cramps, it's probably because you have a loss of sodium, which means put sodium back into the diet first. Usually, if salting your food the day of the show doesn't help, I've gotten people backstage where they're really cramping bad, and I've given them a teaspoon of sodium, which is a lot of salt, in about with a shot of water, like one or an ounce and a half of water, and put it down. Wait 15 minutes. That usually solves the problem. If you're almost cramping before you get on stage, I recommend doing that. If that doesn't help, 15 minutes later, I usually do it again, and invariably 2 teaspoons of salt always helps the issue. Very rarely have I seen that not. Now, if it's not an electrolyte-induced cramp and it's like a clenbuterol cramp, because clenbuterol makes the muscles contract a little hard, taking a little diet tonic water, okay, will inhibit that cramping process. Tonic water has methylquinine in there, and that inhibits cramping in the body. But you don't want to do the tonic water if it's a sodium imbalance, because now you're just kind of masking the cramping. You want to get to the root of what's causing the cramping, and that's why you want to restore electrolytes. That's why I have my guys eat a lot of salt the day of the show. They're not drinking anything, but they're eating a lot of salt because that's balancing off their electrolytes, so they're not going to have problems on stage.
Morgan and Mac, how much fat should you incorporate to your carbs up to the days of a show? So I guess in the carbo process.
I never really cut fat out unless a person is like having trouble losing weight. So what I usually do is I just keep the fat in there while they're carbing, because if you take out, let's say you're having 130 grams of fat a day on one of my plans, and you take that out and you put 200 grams of carbs in, or 250 grams, you double that, 260 grams of carbs in to carb up, you're actually still eating less calories than if you would have been on the fat. So that's not good, because if you reduce caloric load, your body's going to use all those carbs for energy, okay, since you've removed the fat. So you want to keep the fat in there and add the carbs on top of that. Now, how many grams of carbs you need is going to be, you're going to have to play with that. That's experimental. That's why I like to play around and carb people up, before the show a little bit, and experiment and see how their body responds to different varying amounts of carbs. This way, when the carb up comes around, I know exactly what to give the person. And if they're a little flat, I can always feed them a little more. So it's a trial and error process. It's hard to put a number exactly on it, but certainly don't remove the fats. I like to keep the fats about 0.5 gram per pound that the person weighs.
Miguelito Hudson, good friend of the show. Do you have any specific tricks or tips to develop front delts? I have good chest development and tricep development, but my front delts lag. I think it's because my triceps and chest will take over when doing any type of presses.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking for front delts, right? That was the question?
Yes, front delts.
I like to do front raises in both positions, in a neutral position and in a front position. Always like those. Even do it with a handle 2 at a time. I really like those as well. You could do upright rows. Those work your front delts, as well. And of course, the biggest mass builder is going to be, overhead presses from the front. That's going to work a lot of front delts, and that's going to build probably the most muscle. Now, a lot of guys do dumbbells too, but when you bring the dumbbells out to the side, you're using a lot of side delt for that. You're not using quite as much front delt. Most people don't have front delt issues. They have pec issues, because the front delts do everything. But you got to do those front presses. I know they suck and they hurt, but if you can get back and sit in a chair and just push that weight up, you're going to work those front delts really well. And then you hit it with a couple, 2 or 3 sets of front raises, which really isolate those front delts. You're going to see some good development.
We have time for a couple more questions, but first we step aside. When we return, more Ask Dave right here on rxmuscle.com. Dave on rxmuscle.com. Reminder right now on rxmuscle.com and the YouTube channel, the first part of our 2-part series with Dorian Yates. Dave's going to be talking again to Dorian next week, so we'll continue this series. But right now, part 1 of our Dorian Yates interview series at rxmuscle.com and the YouTube channel. Every week, we give a shout out to a Species Nutrition retailer. This week's Species Nutrition Retailer of the Week is Body Source. They're located in Suffolk County, New York. So if you're on Long Island, they're located in Miller Place. You can follow them on Instagram at Body Source NY, 691 Route 25A. Let's go back to the questions. We have time for just a couple more. A lot going on right now at rxmuscle.com. Let's go to Christian Galetti. Dave, techniques that can be applied to growing legs that do not involve conventional squats. Says that they have uncomfort in their hips when doing squats. So I guess growing legs without squats.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult because squats are such such a powerful movement. I would probably try to do leg press, but not on the 45 degree. I like the straight on leg press. I like that one better because I think it really hits the quads more. Smith machine squats, if you can't do regular squats, might be something that you can use as an alternative. And of course, hack squats are tremendous as well. But if there's a hip issue there, you might want to go to get some deep tissue massage, chiropractor. You might want to look into getting custom orthotics for your shoes, which will help with your foot and which ultimately adjust your pelvic angles that you're working at. So, if you're having hip pain, it could just mean that your pelvis is off. And if your pelvis could be off because you need an adjustment, or your pelvis could be off because your feet are flat, or your arches might have fallen. So these are issues that you could solve. Unless you have a direct back injury that's causing you to not be able to squat, weird pains, usually can be fixed because of imbalances. And that's what I would address first, because you're never going to really build huge legs without being able to squat. It's just hard to do. You might build size, but they might not have the best shape. So the trick is see if you can get back to squatting by addressing what's going on in your body.
Final questions, Robbins. Does it matter if I'm taking fast-acting or long-acting steroids? Personally, I prefer fast-acting because I seem to get less swelling and discomfort.
You could grow either way from fast or short-acting steroids. Fast-acting or long-acting steroids. I prefer the long-acting ones. I think you get better blood levels of them and more consistent. But the fast-acting ones work just as well. The problem is that the fast-acting ones require that the liver work harder to break them down because they're in and out of the system so quickly. So you're going to have more toxicity, with the shorter-acting ones. Whereas the longer-acting, you can stand on them longer because they don't really have as much toxicity in the body. That's the trade-off. The final results you get from them are pretty much the same.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Again, right now at speciesnutrition.com, the shirt that Dave is wearing by House of Pain, houseofpain.com, in collaboration with Species Nutrition. We have 46 remaining on the website. Purchase $100 or more at speciesnutrition.com, and you get that exact same t-shirt. For Dave Palumbo and Tyler Shore, I'm Sadiq Faruqi, reminding you to watch the Dorian Yates interview right now at rxmuscle.com. We'll see you next week.